Hello everyone, and welcome to my next episode of Witcher Book Club. This is a series where I read through the Witcher books and just kind of share my own thoughts, go through each chapter and do a deep dive in a lot of the things and the themes that we see in The Witcher, and of course talk about how it may or may not relate to The Witcher Netflix Season 2 and moving forward in the series. Today we are going to be talking about Chapter 2 of Blood of Elves, and boy oh boy is it a spicy one. So grab your favorite drink, get yourself comfortable, and let's go ahead and dive into Chapter 2. Chapter 2 opens with a character known as Triss Merigold, and all of us who are fans of the Witcher series, we obviously know who Triss is, but this is actually our first time meeting Triss Merigold as a character. We've heard her name been brought up a few times before, and specifically we've heard her name brought up as the 14th one, the one who was supposed to have died along with two other sorceresses at Sodden Hill. And her name is on the monument in Sodden Hill, and it is alleged that she's dead, but as we see, she's not, and she's here traveling on her way to Kaer Morhen along the path, the trail as they call it. And it's getting cold. Kaer Morhen is very north toward the Blue Mountains, and as she's traveling, she runs into Ciri for the first time. And it's funny because she mistakes Ciri to be a boy at first. She sees her from a distance, and she thinks that this is obviously a new Witcher boy that they're training up, because Witchers only train males at this point. And so she obviously just assumes that this is a boy, but as she gets closer, she realizes, no, this is a girl? What? The Witchers have a girl here that they're training? What's going on here? So she begins to talk to Ciri a little bit more, and the two of them meet for the first time. Ciri mentions Geralt, and Triss is all like, oh, Geralt's here? Oh. So we learn that Triss is summoned to Kaer Morhen, and she's not really sure why at first. And I always found this part kind of interesting. It's like, what, did she just get a mysterious letter from the Witchers saying, please, you are summoned to Kaer Morhen, please come now? And there's no reason. She's not sure why she was summoned to Kaer Morhen, but she just shows up and she's like, I'm here, but I'm not sure why. I don't know, that part was always weird to me. Like, she doesn't know why she was brought to Kaer Morhen, but she decided to go anyway. And so the most interesting thing that happens in this scene is where Ciri begins to prophesize in front of Triss. It just happens, and it's kind of creepy, and it's kind of weird. And this is like the first red flag for Triss for why she's in Kaer Morhen, and it's just a very chilling moment for her. This is where Ciri begins to prophesize, and she says, a mound of earth which will be overgrown with nettles. Death has cold blue eyes, and the height of the obelisk does not matter, nor does the writing engraved matter. Who can know better than you, Triss Merigold, 14th one of the hill? And the enchantress froze. She saw the girl's hands clench to the horse's mane. You died on the hill, Triss Merigold. The strange, evil voice spoke again. Why have you come here? Go back once and take this child, the child of elder blood, with you. Return her to those whom she belongs. Do this, 14th one, because if you do not, you will die once more. The day will come when the hill will claim you. The mass grave and the obelisk on which your name is engraved will claim you. And it's like, what? That part was really creepy. Very chilling moment whenever Ciri does this prophecy stuff, it gets kind of creepy. So that's the first time it happens, and that's obviously ding ding, red flag for Triss. So then after all of this, Triss finally makes it to the main part of Kaer Morhen and is greeted by the Witchers. And we see here that there was clearly a previous relationship between the Witchers and Triss. This isn't their first time meeting. They all know each other. Vesemir is clearly very close with Triss. She calls him grandfather. They all have a relationship. Lambert's a little bit rude to Triss and just calls her Merigold all the time. And we learn later that this begins to get on her nerves. And then we get to the part where Triss is reunited with Geralt. And Triss clearly has some very strong feelings for Geralt. And the next portion of this chapter dives very much into this. And we dive into some of the inner monologues of Triss and who she is as a character and what she's going through. And I actually really like this part. I like that that Sapkowski tells us a little bit about Triss's history, and gives us a little more context as to why Triss feels the way she does about Geralt. She is, well, first of all, when she first sees him, when the two of them get their alone time for the first time, they're like returning the horse to the stable, she can't contain herself and she just goes in for a kiss, and Geralt's like, Triss, not now, there are people coming. And so, she's clearly like overwhelmed with emotion when she sees Geralt again for the first time in a long time. I'm going to talk about this a little bit because a lot of people think Triss is very annoying, and it's because of these upcoming scenes. She is very much enthralled with Geralt, and in a way, it's a little bit unrequited. And I feel like Sapkowski tries his best to write the reasons why she feels the way she does, but it still comes off very abrasive, and I think a lot of people don't like Triss because of that. And again, we go through this inner monologue of Triss, and she is laying in bed, tossing and turning, and trying to figure out why she's here in Kaer Morhen, and if it has anything to do with Geralt and his feelings, because she's really not sure. And you kind of have to put yourself in Triss's shoes for just a moment here. She clearly has some pretty strong feelings about Geralt for her own reasons. She's really into him. And so because of that, she's thinking a little irrationally, and she's thinking like, okay, maybe it has something to do with Geralt. Maybe he, wants me to be here. She's clearly thinking that way because she's really into him. And that's something that I feel like a lot, you can relate to in some senses. If you really like a person, you kind of want to convince yourself that you're around that person because they want you to be around them. So that's what she's thinking. And she also is thinking about her friend Yennefer and their relationship. And she's thinking about it like, they have been on and off. I've seen their relationship. I've seen, from an outsider's perspective, there's something going on here, and I'm not really sure why they're on and off, why they have such a rocky relationship. And she's jealous of it, first and foremost. And it happens, You are into somebody and you see them in a relationship with somebody else, and of course you're going to be jealous of it.
Hi everyone, this is Editing Tracy chiming in for a second here. I want to note that I talk a lot about these relatable feelings in this segment, but I want to clarify that just because they are quote-unquote relatable doesn't mean that they are healthy. So the way Triss is feeling in this segment isn't exactly a healthy way to handle your emotions, but it does pose for an interesting character flaw that makes her a lot more human in some accounts. So I just wanted to quickly explain that and share that I don't exactly condone Triss's behavior here.
There is one moment in this chapter that I think a lot of people read and don't like Triss, and for their own reasons. It's the scene where it mentions that Triss seduced the Witcher with a little help of magic. I am not going to dive too much into this because it is something that a lot of folks who have read The Witcher have said could be a really big problem. If we don't know the extent of what kind of magic Triss used on Geralt, and there's just not enough written here in the context of the book of what she did, whether it was some sort of charm spell, or if she just maybe made herself look prettier, maybe used a little bit of glamour eye and, tried to make herself look good and smell good and, hit up the Witcher. I'm not going to get too deep into this because it does bring up some problems that I am not really wanting to talk about. As we learned more about Triss as a character later on in the series, she is a pretty complex character. She has a lot of emotions, she has a lot of faults, and she has a lot of problems. And she definitely lets her feelings for Geralt become a big thing for a while, and she can't get over these feelings at first. It's clearly very, very strong. And so Sapkowski makes that very clear in these first couple of chapters that Triss really has a thing for Geralt. And it is what it is. You know what? A lot of people end up having a thing for Geralt. We'll learn later on in the book. A lot of people sleep with Geralt, and Geralt likes to sleep with a lot of people. So a lot of other sorceresses, as we'll learn. So the next scenes in the chapter are some of my favorite scenes, I think, in the entire book. It's a little bit of a new dynamic that we see between Ciri and Triss, and it's actually really cool and just a really awesome part of the book. So there's a lot of narrative tension built up between Triss and Geralt, but the next scenes in the book are more focused on Triss and Ciri, and I really like this portion of the book. Triss begins to help Ciri out a little bit. She notices, first of all, that the Witchers are feeding her these mushrooms that are allegedly a enhancement mushroom that kind of helps her development a little bit more. And it's the first time they're ever feeding these types of mushrooms to a girl. And that could have some sort of effects to her and her hormonal growth and all of these things, of growth of a young girl, that they're just like feeding, Ciri the stuff and not really thinking about her. And Triss becomes increasingly aggravated as she sees more and more the way the Witchers are treating Ciri. And I think this is a very important part of the book because it shows an interesting dynamic between how men who are kind of clueless raise a young girl versus when a woman comes in and realizes that she is a woman and she has womanly needs, and there are some things that the Witchers really need help with. And it takes a lot for that to finally happen. It takes a lot for the Witchers to finally admit that they need help raising Ciri right now, and Triss is the person that they turn to. And I think Triss is a really good person to turn to because Triss is very in touch with her feminine side. Showing that a little bit to Ciri as she's, in her younger development stages, I think is very helpful for her to understand. I mean, she was raised a princess, and so she has some of that etiquette that has been there from her as a younger child. But now she's being raised by a bunch of Witchers, and that's a totally different dynamic for her. So I think Triss coming in and learning how Ciri has been raised by these Witchers is really helpful and important. The two of them, Ciri and Triss, go upstairs to her room, and as Ciri is undressing, Triss sees all of these bruises and scars and marks on a young girl. And Triss is like the first person to actually give a shit about Ciri and the injuries that the Witchers are putting her through all of this training. And it really creates a serious amount of realism. Like, a lot of times in books and things and stories, we don't think about the day-to-day things that us as people go through, the things that we get injuries and bruises and scars, and we have to, women go through their monthly cycles and things like that. And this is actually brought up in this book. So Ciri is too ashamed to say out loud that she recently had her period. And she whispers it to Triss, and Triss, this is like the last straw for Triss. She was cursing in Dwarvish and getting very upset, learning about all of these things that the Witchers have been neglecting to do to take care of Ciri, and this was the final straw. So she marches herself downstairs and gives her piece of mind to the Witchers, and it ensues a little bit of a debate. I think Geralt and Vesemir get very defensive, specifically Geralt. He's he gets pretty defensive in that he's like, I am raising her like a Witcher. She's been through a lot and we're, helping her. So you don't even know Triss. She's been through the fall of Sintra and watching her people suffer. But really, I do respect Triss a lot for calling them out in this point, because she does make some really good points, that the Witchers are neglecting a lot of Ciri's needs, and it is very important that somebody take care of her and her needs beyond just training her day in and day out. Vesemir even comes to a point where he says, don't get caught up in your emotions, and it's like, Vesemir, you Did you really just say that? Boy, did you really just say that. You never tell a girl that she's caught up in her emotions. Lambert isn't really having it. Cohen begins to start to feel bad. But the MVP here is actually Eskel. Eskel comes up to Triss and is very, he like kind of like kneels to her and is like, Triss, we need your help. Please help us. And he is the only one to actually ask for help at this point. The rest of them are maybe feeling bad or, you know, in their moment, but Eskel is the one who actually asks Triss for help. And finally, she can actually deliver on that. And she realizes more and more, this is probably the main reason that she was brought to Kaer Morhen, was to help the Witchers take care of Ciri, this young girl who is the princess, the lion cub of Sintra. And the next scene is obviously very adorable. Ciri comes down in this little dress that was given to her by Triss and a nice cool necklace and begins to act very proper and very princess-like. And it's the moment where you realize that, yes, Ciri actually was once a princess and she was raised a princess and she still has some of those mannerisms. So I think that's a good moment for us as readers to remember that Ciri right now is being trained to be a Witcher, but she also, deep down, that's who she is. She's a princess also, you know? So let's not forget that. And so the chapter ends with Triss having a few conditions and agreeing to help take care of Ciri for some time, but she has some very serious conditions. And she realizes more and more that Ciri is very powerful in her own right. And she has some serious things going about her with this prophesizing that Triss has even witnessed herself that needs to be further explored. Some of the conditions is that she does need to experience things that a young girl should experience, like being among other children, which Geralt agrees that she is going to go to the Temple of Meletele, which is a very important thing. Finally, Triss actually calls her Ciri a source, which I think this is the first time we're hearing the word source, and we learn more about what that is later on in the next chapter, but this is a big moment for a realization for Geralt and Vesemir and everybody that Ciri is a lot more dangerous and uncontrollable than we all think that she is. She has some very strong powers that, if left untapped, could be very dangerous and detrimental to a lot of people. So Triss is willing to explore this a little bit more, and we see more of that in the next chapter, and we'll talk about that in our next chapter, chapter 3 of Blood of Elves, where we learn more about her being a source. So now that we've went through chapter 2, I want to talk about what things I think we might see in season 2 of The Witcher Netflix and this chapter. So it is confirmed that Triss is going to be at Kaer Morhen with Ciri and Geralt and all of the Witchers. And so we're probably going to see a lot of this similar dynamic between the Witchers, between Triss. Pretty sure we're going to see the tension between Triss and Geralt. I think it has even been confirmed, again, spoilers, I think it might be confirmed that there might be some actual love times between Triss and Geralt. Don't quote me on that, but I think that might actually happen. So we may see a bit of that love triangle, if you want to call it that, between Triss, Geralt, and Yennefer. I honestly hate the love triangle, and I hope that we don't play a lot into that. I've grown to actually hate it. And when I first played the Witcher games, like, I was okay, like the whole Team Yen, Team Triss thing. I now absolutely hate it. And I love Yennefer and I love Triss as their own individual characters, and I don't like pitting them against each other in this love triangle. But I do think we're going to see some of that tension and some of that those feelings of Triss with Geralt. But I also do think we're going to see some moments of Triss with Ciri and learning about how the Witchers are poorly poorly caring for her, and Triss stepping in and helping her out a little bit more. So I am looking forward to seeing that in season 2 and how they play all of these moments in live action. I think will be really interesting. So that's it for chapter 2. I hope you guys enjoyed, and let me know your thoughts on chapter 2. Again, it's a controversial one in my opinion, but nonetheless a good one, and I do really like Triss as a character. She definitely has some major faults, but I think I also gain a lot of respect for her in this chapter for calling out the Witchers and calling them on their horrible nurturing of poor Ciri, poor little 12-year-old Ciri. So let me know your thoughts below, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye, everybody. See ya.